disappointed. Oh, yeah?
Started today.
There wasn't much up here either.
What's the weather like when you're down there?
That was spring.
You didn't miss a thing up here.
Slightly cooler than I expected, but still not.
Well, we got a lot of changes here and let's see.
Motorboat?
Probably not.
Well, we got a new cop. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. The chief,
She quit.
yeah.
Hi, doing?
I hope they sold the police car.
That's right.
That was
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was really trying to build a little.
Oh, yeah, it sure was.
We are now being live streamed, I'm sorry, went on without the code.
Oh, it's on.
Yes.
I was looking at the
Well,
Amazing how many names I can forget.
I close the door.
Freedom's a pretty expensive town these days.
So anyways, I'll call a meeting to order. It's gonna be, I think, a relatively short meeting. So that won't hurt. Yeah.
I think I'll let you about it.
Yeah.
So, wanna, welcome you guys all back. Good to see you. And I trust your off-season time was probably just as crazy as mine was. Seems like there's meetings every week somewhere that somebody wants you to be at. But it's all part of the job. We've got quite a lot of stuff that we got done last year, but there's still issues that we have before us this year. And Michael went through the list and made everyone had Linda put together Michael's list. You want to run through those, Michael? And appreciate you doing that. Very helpful.
So I have a hard copy. Anyone wants a hard copy?
Yep.
So I broke it down into the categories of bills that your committee had jurisdiction over and that passed, bills that you voted out of your committee because you had jurisdiction over them, but they were included in other acts, and then acts that initiated in other committees that were passed, but your committee was involved in passing enactment of. And then committee bills that are still alive in your committee that you took testimony on and drafted amendments to last year, but did not move. And then additional issues that I think you're probably going to see this year, but I can't talk about. Well, I probably can now since they were just introduced. But there are bills that you're going to see. I'm not sure how public they are yet. So the first category are the acts that were within your committee's jurisdiction that you voted out. They both have the same name. They're the miscellaneous agricultural subjects bills, the one that started in the Senate and the one that started in the House. The Senate version addressed quarantine of domestic animals that were exposed to biological or chemical agents, updated the egg law, increased the agency's maximum administrative penalties, and it did some additional enforcement changes. And it clarified that municipalities cannot assess stormwater fees on property subject to the RAPs.
Now that one, is there a time limit on that, Michael?
Sunset?
Yeah.
I don't believe there is a sunset on that, but I can double check.
Seems like there was a study, some kind of a study. And
Oh, there was the report back. Yes. Yes. Hold on a second.
But in the meantime, it held in abeyance any fees, correct?
Right, for.
Ray had stuck a study on that or something,
No, I don't think the study actually
didn't make it.
passed, at least not in Act 42, because Act 42 says municipality shall not charge an impervious surface fee or other stormwater fee under this title on property regulated by the RAPs. And then there was a implementation provision that said it shall apply prospectively, shall not require municipality to refund stormwater fees assessed prior to the effective date. There's no sunset, there's no study. Now, I know that some of the towns are still not happy about it. Some of them have lost revenue that they expected. But other than that, I don't know that there's no study or
No, that's good.
Moving down the second miscellaneous agricultural subjects bill, this is the one that originated in the House. It amended the process for the stipend grant for the ag fairs and field days. You'll remember that there always traditionally was a stipend, but it had been implemented through rule, and that rule was for some reason adopted under the authority for horse racing. And then the General Assembly repealed the horse racing chapter and took away the agency's authority for the stipend for field and fairs. And so you put it in statute. It's effectively, it's a very similar stipend, but you build into it some ability to address greater needs at certain fairs and field days. In the past, it was just everybody got effectively an equal amount. Now there's a base equal amount, but it can go up if you have large crowds, days that you're in operation. So a field day that's in operation for 2 weeks doesn't get the same as a field day that's in operation for 3 days. So there's flexibility built into the stipend award.
And as long as we're on field days, fairs and field days, we still are dealing, I don't know if any of you heard from the constituents in regards to the rain runoff from the fairs and assessment fees that they're thinking about levying on the field and farm and field days events.
I think that big in Rutland?
3 acre rule, yeah.
I mean, they're all,
Oh,
most all of them are in the same boat. There's a few little ones that don't.
I think they lowered the limit on stormwater runoff this past year too.
that's my knowledge.
That's the construction
Yeah.
stormwater permit that
Yeah.
went from 1 acre to half an acre.
And that happened
Yeah.
July 1st, so if you do any sort of roof on anything, you're in.
Somehow,
But the fairs and field days is, as Senator Palmer noted, the 3 acre rule. And that is if you have impervious surface of 3 acres or more that was unpermitted or permitted prior to 2004, you have to bring that property up to the current stormwater standard. And it sounds relatively innocuous when you say it the way I just said it, but when you realize that there might be large tracts of impervious surfaces at schools or fairs or places like that, I think the mall in Rutland was an issue as well.
Car dealer.
That they have to do significant work on those properties to bring them up.
So I understand the 3 acre rule and what is existing in that. I have was approached and said that they were trying to build a whole building on the property, and that would be affected with the half acre.
With the half acre, yeah.
So who determines what's impervious and what's not?
You have defined that, the General Assembly has defined what's impervious surface. And it's not potentially as intuitive as you might think, because it includes packed down dirt road and cinder
I
road.
thought dirt roads are supposed to not be.
But as you define them in statute, it includes those roads.
So if you had a horse racetrack or an old racetrack at a fairgrounds, that
It
would
potentially could be if it meets the kind of packed standard for, yeah.
If you upgrade a parking lot,
So yes, if you upgrade a parking lot and you exceed the half acre limitation, no, actually, for the upgrade, it's still an acre.
for the upgraded acre,
But for new, it's a half an acre.
okay.
So is there any way that we could exempt issues like fairs that are only utilized, say, less than 10 or 12 days a year from the process?
That program is an entirely state enacted and administered program. The only consideration that you'll have to take into account is that those programs were enacted in part to meet the Lake Champlain TMDL implementation plan. Before you to adjust or provide for an exemption, you should probably talk to Julie more about how it would affect that implementation plan.
Because most of these fairs, as we all know, are, other than a couple of one of the big ones, it's kind of running on a shoestring, and quite a few families, that's their outing for the year, is to attend their local fair and field days, and it just seems kind of weird that they're only there for a few days. And the rest of the time they're sitting there idle, taking on water, and everything seems strange that we're gonna chase them out of business.
My field is parks in a field. If it's a wet year, it's not really a parking lot, they park in a field. If they go to upgrade something, which they've been trying to do over time, so it isn't all mud, the half acre would catch them.
I think I think that's gonna be a factual determination about whether or not what is currently there qualifies as impervious surface. And if you're
It's grass,
Yes.
but they're trying to put drives into these fields.
If you just gravelled that field, it would be SRL.
So I can't really say for sure, but it could potentially trigger the half acre.
But anyways, that's an issue that Senator Bray talked about Brian and I this morning. I guess he's been getting several phone calls from Addison County and down his way. So he said that he'd like to work with us on that as a committee, his committee and ours. So that's ahead of us. So sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Moving on Act 73. Some of the things that it did is it amended the apiary law. Largely the changes in the apiary law were to provide gender neutral language, but the big one that big change that was made was removing the exemption for a health certificate when you originated with your bees in Vermont, send it over to New York to pollinate, and then bring it back within 45 days. Previously, you didn't need a health certificate when you did that, but now you will need a health certificate when you bring your bees back into the state. You also brought in those soil amendment products that were marketed for hydroponics and other cultivation techniques that didn't use soil. You brought them underneath the agency's regulations. You said that people that were installing nursery stock as a business needed to get a nursery dealer license. And that basically brought some commercial landscapers into the nursery dealer regulatory scheme. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on when we talk about timber trespass, because you're probably going to see a bill on that that might have some overlap with the nursery dealer program. And then you extended for 1 year the sales tax exemption on advanced wood boilers. That's one that, you know, routinely pops up at the end of the session. So on the second page, the bills that you looked at, but were then included specifically in the appropriations bill, were beginning with H205 was the Small Farmer Diversification and Transition Program. That's the bill that the House worked on and was going to set up a program at the agency with working lands, kind of separate from working lands, but because they didn't want the working lands criteria to be part of the award, so they set up their own criteria. They had appropriated $350,000. It came over to you. You thought it would be more effectively run through working lands, so that the staff of the program could administer it, and the agency had actually requested that. You kept the 350 as it came out of your committee, but when it went to the appropriations committee, they didn't act on the bill. They just took the program and put it into Act 78, the appropriations bill, and they appropriated 150 to the agency for a grant program as part of working lands. So it's a 1-year program. See how it does. You can revisit it.
And that was basically reduced partly because of the 6.9 that we're gonna get to eventually, and to make that work at 6.9, we needed
That's right.
extra money, so we had to reduce, we reduced that by a couple $100,000, thinking there would only be this first half of the year that it really took off and needed some more help. We'd deal with it, you know, during the budget adjustment or something like that.
Well, that's a good segue, because the next bill that's on the table is the 6.9. It's the organic, the financial assistance to organic dairy farms. As you may recall, you drafted a bill out of your committee to provide that assistance to the organic dairy industry. And it was sent down to the Appropriations Committee, where it was incorporated into Act 78. There was the 6.9 million. The application deadline was October 20th. I believe they've used all the 6.9, and they might actually need some additional money to fulfill or to provide grants to all those that were eligible.
Yeah, there's four farms that 3 didn't get any money. And the first of the 4 got a partial payment of 15,000 or something like that. But they need, I've heard 2 numbers, one 400,000, one 200,000. So we're gonna have to get someone from the agency over, figure out if it's a 2 something to make sure everyone gets their money for the 4. but then we can work on that in budget adjustment and try to, because it isn't really right to pay the 100 and some odd farmers. And just because these 4 applicants happen to be at the tail end, somebody had to be at the tail end. They ran out of money.
Were they late in applying or how was it that they ran out?
Their application came in on time and I mean, that's just the way it worked. I'm sure that the EB or somebody from the agency can,
They were processed last.
yeah, they happened to work through the system and came out on the tail end. Somebody always has to be at
If you meet the deadline and you're the last one processed, and you run out of money, that's not fair.
That's basically what happened. If it's 400 grand, probably a little rough getting that, but a couple 100,000,
Is the House
I
gonna,
think we can.
is the House Ag Committee lobbying their appropriations committee to make sure it's in the budget adjustment, so the Senate doesn't get stuck like we did with, this number last time?
Well, Dave's, Senator Dufresne and I, we're supposed to be meeting with the Ag, Anson Tebbets from Ag. And we'll have to discuss that, hopefully, because the last time they sent us a bill with no money, I think.
Yes, that's what they did.
They just sent the bill over, take care of it, and wished us well. And nothing wrong with that, it went well. But the numbers that we received from the assessors was a little bit short, but if it's 200,000 on 6.9 million, that's pretty close. We could have been over the other way and had a surplus a couple hundred.
It would be easier on us if the House, who started this whole initiative and then never put the money in, made sure that the 200,000 was in their budget.
Well, didn't they put 9 million in to begin with or something?
In the budget adjustment, and then it got removed, and then they never put it in the budget.
That's right.
Yeah, we were a little short. Yeah, I mean, it all worked out. And, I mean, some of us have worked together quite a while, so,
Well,
and they're fairly new committee.
what it worked out how it worked out. The administration had a number of proposals in what was their want list, that some of it around slaughterhouses, some of it and a lot of that stuff went by the wayside
Oh, yeah.
because me and the Senate had to accommodate for that.
So anyways, that's an issue that.
So should I move on?
Yeah.
So the next were acts that were initiated in other committees, but your committee took part in reviewing. The first is Act number 64, referred to as H-165. That's Universal School Meals Bill. I think you all know what that is. I won't go over that in depth. And then the next one was Act number 65. That was the Adult Use and Medical Cannabis Program. The provision that your committee worked on was to grant to all outdoor cultivators those benefits that had previously only been given to small cultivators. So exemption from municipal zoning and bylaw regulation, exemption from Act 250, eligibility for use value, etc. That was popular among the cultivators, but as it turns out, it wasn't so popular among the municipalities. And it came up most specifically in Essex Junction, where the Cannabis Control Board said that they didn't think that they had the ability to deny an application for cultivation based on where a parcel was located or any other siting conditions. So they approved a cultivator license in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And then that person got 100 ducks.
Yeah, what?
He got 100 ducks and became a farm in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So Essex Junction is not real happy. And you're probably gonna see through the government operations committee some language to address municipal authority or municipal authority over cultivators in certain densities, or giving the Cannabis Control Board citing authority to deny cultivation citing in inappropriate areas.
So the same cultivator also put on 100 ducks.
Yeah, and I think the property was like 3/4 of an acre.
The total parcel.
We should do a field trip. I want to see this farm.
I
And
think,
when this had become a farm, how many ducks?
Yeah.
I think you need 100 ducks.
Oh, so, okay,
The ducks are fertilizing the cannabis, giving it a certain flavor. It's actually type of cannabis.
But the neighbors are, at first it was odor, and now it's odor and noise.
but if it was 99 ducks, it wouldn't be a farm.
Technically, yeah, it's the Noah's Ark list under the RAPs.
But on 3/4 of an acre of land, I mean, that's not even a good health spot. And,
Not in the Northeast Kingdom. In Essex, it's a pretty good house lot.
I feel bad for people in Essex.
Go back to the ducks.
Essex Junction, different
Yeah.
size.
So which is which?
I'm in
Are we
Essex.
talking about Essex?
We're talking about Essex Junction,
Essex Junction.
which is now a city,
Which is not in your district.
not my district.
That- It just seems weird that if you have 3/4 of an acre of land, must be there's a house somewhere.
There is, and there's, I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw a satellite image. It must have been a Google Earth image of it. And it was before the ducks were on it. It was difficult to see how that got approved.
Do we have an address?
8 Taft Street,
What?
8 Taft Street.
8 Taft
No,
Street.
that isn't right. I mean, that wasn't the intention of what we were doing, is to let these little lots in the middle of a village or town. Certainly,
So, and I think the property owner has a pretty, from his point of view, he's complying with the law. He's doing what the law says he can. And he's arguing that he's no different from anyone else that could do what the law allows.
well, I guess that may be something that we should have some witnesses come in and explain to us and be thinking about. I mean, that certainly wasn't the intent, to allow somebody that was blessed with a little larger lot than the neighbors, turn it into a farm by adding a certain number of animals. But anyways, that, I guess we got some work to do there. Did any other places in Bennington, do you have anything like that going? With that on your part?
Sears has a golden retriever.
You like that run?
Might let that go.
One golden doesn't.
That doesn't do it.
How many cows do you have to have? 5?
Yeah, I had to ask.
I'm just kidding.
I think it's not that many. I do think it's 5.
I don't know why that number stuck in my head, but you might have been better off to get fewer animals, but larger ones. I don't know. 100 ducks
The
seems like a
cannabis
lot
will
of
taste
ducks.
different.
Wow.
It's, the whole point is the cannabis flavored by ducks. Yeah,
That's
a
legitimate.
secret, it's
Really?
legit, yeah.
Are you speaking
We
from
had fewer
experience or?
ducks, yeah, well, this was a constituent of mine when I was,
Oh.
on
Oh,
the
so
select
you
board.
got in on this.
No, this has happened since I was off the select
Well, he
board,
has a pretty good backyard.
but until the village split and became a city last year.
Yeah, but is that fenced?
I was
Is
made aware
there-
of
No, it's right there.
issue.
It's a pretty good backyard.
So it's not loaded on my iPad for some reason.
It doesn't matter, Michael. I forgot.
Okay,
So, moving on to page 4, you did work on 2 committee bills last year that are still here. The first is relating to protection from nuisance suits for agricultural activities, also known as the Right to Farm Bill. As you worked on that bill, you made some significant amendments to it. It started out as giving additional nuisance protection to most farmers or additional agricultural activities, but you scaled that back because of input from advocates to propose that a person shall not bring a court action based on a claim of nuisance arising from an agricultural activity unless the person and the operator of the activity at least once attempt to resolve through mediation the issue or dispute that the person has concerning operation of the agricultural activity. That's the current status of the bill. It's still here. It hasn't been voted out, but that's the current draft that you have in front of you.
and that bill, I intend that we'll work back on that and try to get it going. really.
The other was the Milk Commission bill. The Milk Commission had proposed language to clarify the authority, the commission to Dairy Commission, which is different from the Milk Commission. The Dairy Commission was a study. They recommended that the Milk Commission's authority, which is the state entity that has authority over milk pricing in the state, that their authority be amended so that they would be directed to set an equitable minimum price that milk handlers shall pay to milk producers for milk processed and manufactured in the state. It suggested multiple amendments to the procedures of the commission, required the commission to meet, and would have appropriated $800,000 to the Agency of Ag for implementation of the program. You got that $800,000 into the dairy risk management program that's been ongoing to pay for farmers' participation in the federal dairy risk management program. Probably want to talk to the agency about how well that did this year. Milk prices were a little bit higher than expected.
That's the insurance program.
Right.
You mean the DMC?
DMC,
Fine.
yeah.
It is paid, well, I mean, milk prices are down to $18, $19. And so that DMC's
And feed was up because of
big
because of hay and other feed.
it's like an insurance program, it's worth having. So are you saying that prices were up this year, so if they didn't get a payout?
No, they got a payout, it's because it's a formula, right? So even
Yep.
though the prices might have been a little bit higher,
Okay,
then the other costs were higher and they got a payout. But that's the risk you take with that program.
well, it's an
any year.
insurance program, sometimes it works,
Right.
sometimes it doesn't.
No, it worked well.
Yeah, I'm not saying, but there is a chance if milk prices went up, you wouldn't get it, but
But
protects you from the worst.
the whole deal on that is, what's bad about it is we get, say, a couple bucks a hundredweight from this program, so it goes to the farmer direct. Well, then the board of directors at the co-op, well, they'll vote to take $1.50 out of the farmer's milk check to help offset the expenses of the co-op. So and farmers approve that. So we give them money through this DMC program that's supposed to help their bottom line. But then at the same time, the money gets, part of the money, some money out of the milk check gets extracted to help keep the co-op going. And I'd like to have I'd like to get them in here, the co-op people sometime, to explain to us how that all works. Rich?
Is there, I know part of the reason we had to do the other program for the organics is that they didn't fit in this. And there were some attempts to see if we could get them into this program so we don't get caught like we were.
They technically qualify.
They now technically,
No, they always did qualify, but they will never get it because of the formula, will never likely get a payment.
Yeah.
did we make, am I remembering this wrong, that we were thinking about, we lobbied our congressional delegation and we asked them if there was any way to tweak this program so they could go in. Do you know if,
That's still up in the air.
Yeah, the farm bill is still working.
well, it would save us a lot if they would tweak the program to allow them in, and I think at some point we should try to keep the pressure on the congressional delegation to keep working on this.
But I don't think they never figure it out, because unless the price of their milk bottoms out really bad, the cost of their feed, of course, is high.
Is there
That would work, but most of them guys are paying $40 a hundredweight for the milk processors. So the milk price is really close with the feed price, so that they don't qualify. And they get their shipping usually for free, the processor pays that. But it's a formula, I guess they have one formula for everybody.
Well, and I guess that's what we were trying to get them to take a look at, is the formula, because the organic people are not the same.
No, they don't cut it. And I don't, you're gonna have two formulas? I mean, I don't think.
Well, I don't, what I'm afraid is going forward, we aren't gonna have the money, with the revenue situation the way it is, to be able to bail out organic farmers like we did last year.
Oh, we know
So-
that.
So are we headed to a place where I know they're milk payout is higher, but their feed costs are higher.
Yeah.
That they're just eventually gonna get squeezed out because,
Well, their milk prices have come back good.
Okay.
Yeah. They,
well, that helps in the immediate, but over the long term, we're not gonna every time it goes down be able to help with that. And
no, I mean, it's just a matter. But I don't see where Acro's gonna fix that. They might know something. Well, we'll have our congressional folks in anyway sometime. See if they're even thinking about it. Did you have one more, Mike?
I do. It's on page 5. These are some additional issues that you're likely going to see bills on this year. I don't know if all of them will be referred to your committee, but they definitely will have an impact on agriculture or the agency of agriculture. The first is an animal welfare bill. I think you all heard a couple of instances of animal welfare concerns last year where there was criticism of the lack of coordinated response or coordinated enforcement authority. So over the summer, there was a group that worked to develop a bill that would create an animal welfare division at the Department of Public Safety to try to coordinate enforcement. I don't know where that bill will be sent when it's introduced, but it will address some of the agency's authority and some of the issues that the agency has had. For example, there's currently a provision in statute that says for any complaint, animal cruelty complaint that involves livestock or domestic animals is really the term to use, that the agency of ag has to be consulted prior to the enforcement action. But nobody knows what consulting means. Nobody knows that the agency can say, no, that's not animal cruelty, or the agency has to become involved in the enforcement. So there's some language in that bill that will clarify the agency's role in animal cruelty, while also creating a centralized office. The big issue, I think, with that bill is how to fund that program.
So
And then the
you
next,
don't know if somebody's drafting or,
I drafted it. It's been a very public bill. I work with about 7 major animal welfare advocates. We brought in and contacted public safety and the Agency of Agriculture. Dr. Haas commented, but they were in the executive branch process of approving and reviewing bills. They couldn't really, neither Commissioner Morrison or Dr. Haas could provide a ton of input because they're beholden to what the governor's position is going to be on the bill. And so I think they might have another official position at this point if the bill is taken.
very good. Well, so you'd almost think that would go to judiciary or something like that, or if it's
I think it could go to like 3 different places.
maybe,
Because it could come here, it could go to judiciary, it could go to GovOps, because you're basically creating a new division of state government. So it could go different places. The next one I think you'll see is accessory on-farm businesses. As you might remember, a few years ago, due to interest from the agricultural community, you amended municipal zoning laws to say that municipalities didn't or couldn't regulate certain accessory businesses on a farm, so that there could be value-added production of products on a farm when they were farm-related, and municipalities couldn't zone those businesses away. there's just been interest in the agricultural community to expand what types of activities are eligible for accessory on-farm businesses, and also to add a similar exemption for accessory on-farm businesses under Act 250, because it's not there right now. So what happens is that a farm might be exempt, its accessory business might be exempt from municipal regulation, but then the Act 250 commission says, no, you need an Act 250 permit for that, even though it's exempt from municipal regulation. So I'm sure you've heard debate about what constitutes an accessory business, and that is part of the issue that I think you'll likely see a bill on. And then the next one is pesticides. I don't know if you all heard, but New York just banned the use of neonicotinoid treated seed beginning in 2027. So as most of the seed in Vermont is treated, and most of the treated seed is using a neonic of some form, you're probably going to hear from interested parties that Vermont should do something similar to what New York did.
So well, you may not know, but do you know what they are predicting to use in place of neonic seeds?
I do not know, but I heard that almost immediately seed dealers and other interested parties asked for the date to be moved from 2027 to 2029 so that they could figure out what to use as an alternative.
Because we've heard, I think last year even, that there's only untreated seeds other than neonic treated seeds, and the product that they have to put on the non-treated seeds is worse for the environment than neonics are. So I guess that one there needs looking at.
So I don't know if you'll see a bill on that issue yet. I just wanted to flag it for you because New York just did this, and you're likely going to see advocates looking for something similar.
Oh yeah, they'll pound that right to death.
I think there is a bill,
There is one.
pretty sure. I was asked whether it's something I can support. That's not a Senate bill, it's ours.
It's not a Senate bill.
No.
So then the other pesticide issue is there's these things called second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, and it's a pesticide that deprives an animal of vitamin K. And vitamin K is necessary for clotting of the blood, and it's not just clotting for purposes of wounds. It's clotting so that blood is of a thickness sufficient to get pumped through your body, or pumped through it. Without vitamin K, an animal effectively bleeds out internally. And so that is what many current rodenticides are. It's an anticoagulant rodenticide. The issue has been that birds and other wildlife are eating the corpse or the treated rodents and then bioaccumulating these rodenticides in their body. There's concern that it was just limited to those animals that were feeding off rodents, but then a study came out in the UK in October that said they just tracked sparrowhawks, and sparrowhawks only eat birds. And the sparrowhawks themselves had troubling levels of these types of rodenticides in their body. So it's in the environment right now, and Audubon, Vermont, and others are concerned about its use. It's not a restricted use pesticide right now, so you can like go to the hardware store and buy it. So you'll probably see a bill about these pesticides.
So has the pesticide advisory board looked at this?
Well, you don't have a pesticide advisory council anymore. It's the Agricultural Innovation Board.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they've been asked to look at the use of second generation anti-coagulants.
Because we should, I mean, somebody should be looking at that, where we might want to regulate it or not want to, but should be a non-partisan or type board that would do that would give us this straight scoop on it. But, so people buy this stuff to feed the animals?
You put it out as bait for rodents.
Okay, so it goes into their bait elimination,
Right.
and then they die.
They
The
die,
bird comes and
feeds on it,
plucks it,
scavengers, right?
and then what happens to the bird?
So it
They die?
this study from the UK was the one that said they think the lethal threshold for sparrowhawks was around 100, I don't remember and that they were finding birds with over the lethal amount in them, but they were still alive, but they were obviously unhealthy.
So is this like rodent killer that they put out in the fields?
Yeah.
Or is this rodent killer that would be like the bricks and the stuff that I buy in the hardware store to put in the house?
It's both.
Because it doesn't hurt pets, right? Is this the stuff that your dog could get a little bit of, and it doesn't really bother them, but it somehow kills the
No,
pet? Is that
I
something different?
do think it can affect all animals because of I'm not a scientist, I've just tried to do as much research on this as I could. I think it can affect all animals because it's about deprivation of vitamin K in your bloodstream so that you basically cannot clot, and you can't, and you just bleed out.
So, sort of look at the other side of it. If we were to make this unavailable, are we risking a sort of rodent infestation?
So the bill that I looked at wouldn't make it unavailable, it would make it a restricted use pesticide. So you have to be certified to use it. You have to basically use it in an appropriate way. So you're not just allowing people to buy it kind of freely and use it that way.
See, I never even heard of that.
I never heard of it either.
Use some kind of a decon type stuff for, mice and stuff like that in the fall,
We had a terrible year at home.
but
Mice coming in, the
out of
house.
the weather.
Out of the weather, and they came out of there. I literally had one eat through a water pipe, plastic water pipe, and brand new system in the house, but it changed in 2020, and they ate through. So I must have put this stuff out.
You may have, there's still like the strychnine types, but there's this.
So just more traps is what you're saying.
I'm not saying that you don't use it. It's just that it's used by the people that know, best management practices for using it. They track the usage of it. they track the amount that they use, et cetera.
I use traps. I'm just looking at it and say, if they're used for water pipes, I need something.
So if we, when Anson and the crew comes in, we'll have to ask them about.
I'm wondering what Europe is gonna do. If Britain's coming out with a study like that, I'm guessing Europe isn't gonna go halfway.
I haven't looked at well, I would look at EU, but it's not part of the EU.
That's
anymore,
They may be using their research.
but, and then the last bill is on timber trespass. Timber trespass is currently a crime, so if you, go onto your neighbor's property and cut down a tree, even if you just leave the tree there, or if you take it away to harvest it, that's timber trespass. If you basically remove timber without permission of the landowner, then you have committed the crime of timber trespass. The problem is that it's not being enforced because no law enforcement agency really wants to accept responsibility for it. The Attorney General has prosecuted a couple, state's attorneys have prosecuted a couple of occurrences. But there's, and I don't want to lump the entire industry, there's a couple of bad actors out there that engage in the practice intentionally. What they'll often do is they'll enter a contract to log land for a forest owner, and then they will log more than they contracted for, or they will log timber that they were not supposed to, or they will in their activity log onto the neighboring property, and then no one is enforcing against them. Or sometimes they will log and they'll take the logs off and they will never satisfy the contract in paying the landowner.
So, forest and parks, see most.
Forests and parks has very little enforcement
See,
authority.
most people that own much land, they'll employ a forester. And the forester has to have a license. And, they mark the trees in most cases that the logger's supposed to cut. And they have to be, I thought, licensed through
The forester does.
the
The
way.
person that harvests doesn't need to be licensed. And so there wasn't a communication with the Attorney General about how to improve the regulation and enforcement of timber trespass. And one of the issues or one of the ideas was to have loggers be regulated by OPR, the Office of Professional Regulation, that they would all need a license. The Attorney General supported that idea. I can't really characterize the Department of Forests and Parks position, but they were less than warm to the idea. But then OPR basically said that they would have to do, an entire sunrise review.
Well, I don't know what your schedule is, but Friday, hopefully we're gonna have some forest people in, processors, and Sam Lincoln, that used to be the deputy. He's coming, I think you all got, Linda made a copy
Yes.
of the paper. Those are some of the issues that they're going to talk about. I think maybe this particular subject, we ought to put it to them.
They've been aware. Sam, I don't know if he's a member or an officer. There's I won't call it new, but it's gaining traction a lot. There's a regional forest contractor association that more Vermont harvesters are joining, and because the association is multi-state, has resources, has experience, can advocate on issues across the region for things like workers' comp.
This is not a new issue. This has been going on for decades.
It's not a new issue.
Cutting.
I've drafted the timber trespass or redrafted the timber trespass bill. This is my third time. And the issue has always come down to enforcement. So what the Attorney General is also offering, are you familiar with the home improvement fraud statute? Which says the contractor that enters into a contract to do work on your home, and if they fail to satisfy the contract in one of several different ways, the Attorney General can bring a claim for fraud against that person, and then if found guilty, that person either has to provide financial surety in order to continue a bond, in order to continue working for, I think it's 3 years. What the Attorney General is proposing is that there be something called land improvement fraud. So it's not just about work on a structure on your home, it can be about failing to honor your timber harvest contract, failing to put in the stone wall the right way, failing to do the landscaping. Remember, I said that there's going to be some overlap with the nursery dealers, and this is where it comes in. Because land improvement fraud, as it would be defined, would include these landscapers installing nursery stock. So you're going to see something on that. I don't know where that bill will go. It could go here, it could go to judiciary, but that's kind of an idea that's being proposed to address the failure of enforcement of timber trespass.
Yeah.
To give the AG this other tool that might be more effective in certain circumstances. The timber trespass law, well, as it exists now, would still remain on the books. So the AG could kind of have options to which one would best be used. But it would still be the AG and the state's attorneys that, and there wouldn't be any regulatory agency out there doing it.
See, you'd almost think that Forest and Parks would have, they're supposed to be looking after our forests, not just state lands. I wouldn't think, I would hope not. They should be looking after the well-being of all our wooded land.
They have a private lands division, but it's largely focused on current use and the conservation of land.
So, is this not something that the county forester would, because this doesn't happen a lot. When it happens, it's a big deal, but it's not over all the time. And it used to happen probably more than it does now, with people, not as many lots as well surveyed as we're getting. But people, and the county foresters have to approve the current use plans every 10 years for everybody on how the land's supposed to be managed. Aren't they the logical people to, if there's a dispute, at least question it?
I think the logic is there, but currently the authority for them to do anything is not.
See, they should probably have to have a license. The cutters.
That was proposed.
And they should have to pass a certain test. Like they ought to have to be able to count. Because they have problems counting even the logs when when they ship them to the mill. You know, if you wanna have a forester right on the job, if you hire a cutter to go in and cut, you want the trees marked. You've gotta have the forester right there counting every tree, because the loss is tremendous. That, you know, you take a log that big around and should be like maybe 3 logs in there. Get one maybe. I mean, I was taught young that when you cut wood or have wood cut, you either be there or have a forester right there.
And you know where your boundaries are.
So you don't, if it's the AG, then Sears will be dealing with that, right?
I do think if the Senate Secretary follows this normal practice, it's gonna go to judiciary.
But we could work
So,
with them on,
so,
but OPR should be in on it too.
so the only alternative for somebody right now where they believe they've been wrong and somebody's gone on leave, the only alternative right now is to go to court.
There's the civil remedy that's in statute, yes, and then the other is you try to get a state's attorney or attorney general to bring an enforcement action.
Therein my question about the county forester going in, because you can have somebody licensed, doesn't mean that they don't cross the line and cut something on somebody else's that they're not. But what's the process if you believe somebody has gone on and cut on your land, the boundary's not quite all clear,
So
what's
that's
the process?
the problem, Senator Weston, because it is a crime. And any level 3 certified law enforcement officer can enforce any crime in the state. So state,
What, who can enforce it? Any
any
cop on the beat?
any level 3, but they don't want to.
Well,
But the state, if you call the state police says, I'll tell you, it's not their jurisdiction.
well, the state police know about woodland.
Well, that's their response, it's like, it's not our jurisdiction. But then you would say to them, well, it's a crime, and they're like, it's still not our jurisdiction.
Well, that's only, well, you know,
Just don't cut your trees. Let it grow. Mow over it, cut it or stone.
well, this is not about cutting my trees, this is about somebody coming in
Right,
and
it's
crossing the line and cutting on mine. And, you know, if I've got a forest management plan that says this is gonna happen and somebody else messes it up, so I get in trouble with current use, that's a big deal.
in that instance, I think that's where the forester would be helpful to the person who suffered the timber trespass. Who could document that you hadn't done anything intentional to violate your plan, so you wouldn't be kicked out of the program subject to the language change.
Well, you know, that's the fear.
But if we're gonna do something on it this year, it's gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to get going on it. Health, anything on the health side, do you know?
There's gonna be a bill in both the House and the Senate on this issue.
It is a problem. And this issue we could bring up Friday when we have the forest people in. What about, you know, there's all kinds of new veggies coming on the market. You know, the bottle, and then you got, you know, plant-based milk, black meats. Is there anything we can do about that to regulate it so it can't be called meat or can't be called real, like, doing anything in like nut milk that's milk? I mean, it's a food, but it's not milk.
You're correct, and the authority's already there in statute because in order to sell milk in the state, it has to be the lacteal secretions of an animal. And if it's labeled as milk and it's not the lacteal secretions of an animal, then it is mislabeling of the product and it shouldn't be sold. But the agency, I would say, has taken the position that it's really a federal issue that should be enforced federally, because I believe they're fearful of the litigation and the scope of litigation if they try to enforce that at a state
But
level.
it is a state law.
It's both a federal and a state law. The USDA has a standard of identity for, not USDA, but FDA has a standard of identity for what is milk. And it is a lacteal secretion of an animal. And in order for that food to be sold and labeled as milk, it has to meet that standard of identity. And Vermont has effectively enacted that same standard of identity in state statute. So it is both federally and state, it's a violation of both federal and state law to label something as milk when it's not that lacteal secretion. And you have a similar issue with labeling something as meat or chicken or pork when it is not actually the byproduct of the slaughter of that animal.
So how do they get away with calling it almond milk in stores?
They take the position that it's well, some of them have changed. Like some of them have now call it like a plant-based beverage, and that doesn't raise.
So I can go right down to the store and get
You can get
milk.
almond milk right now, and they take the position that people understand that what they're buying is not milk, not the traditional animal-based milk, and therefore they don't think there's. So the first threshold you have to get through with like FDA labeling, food labeling, is whether or not the label is deceptive to the consumer. So they're arguing it is not deceptive to the consumer for people to buy almond milk when it's, because it's almond milk, it's not just milk.
So what about it that the letters are like a 16th of an inch high?
Well, then you'd have an argument about consumer deception.
I mean,
But I think some of these companies are like, they're recognizing their risk of litigation, and then they're taking actions to try to mitigate that. And I think you see that most in the plant-based meats, where when you go to buy like chicken nuggets, it's CHK apostrophe N, and it's not chicken. It's chicken. You know, it's like, you know, it's they're like, hey, we can do some stuff here to like take away the argument that we're mislabeling our food.
they're misspelling words again. But that almond milk, it's right in the milk cooler. I mean, it should be segregated, it doesn't have to be cool, so why is it in a cooler?
I didn't know
I mean,
Some of it needs to
They
be,
do, it's right beside the regular milk.
some needs to be cooled, some doesn't.
Oh, some does have it.
It depends on its packaging.
But why is it in the dairy cooler? Because most frequently, if I go to Hannaford's or Price Chopper, it's in the milk cooler.
You can go to Trader Joe's, it's not in the dairy. Well, actually, some of it's in the dairy, some of it's not. And it's because of how it was packaged. Like you'll get the shelf stable stuff there.
Mhm.
I do this, I walk around grocery stores looking for this
You are
stuff.
exciting. You're exciting.
Well, what I love is they've introduced the phrase almond milk, so every family that wants to buy it is not gonna say, Mom, can you get some more plant-based soy beverage, right? I mean, they're gonna say soy milk, right? So they've introduced the term such that that's what humans are gonna say, even if they legally do change the name on the package, right? The phrase is still part of the
Well,
vernacular.
and it's in the dairy cooler usually in most of the stores.
But an article just came out on where it was from, but this stuff isn't as nutritious as
That's
real
full of
milk.
sugar and, yeah, that's true.
And then the House, I believe, the Congress just passed out they want to support whole milk in schools.
Thank goodness.
I think they passed that 380 to 1 something, 100. So,
Why is that, thank goodness?
Because there's a lot of nutrition and kids are not getting the healthy fat they need, and then, of course, they're eating junk to make up for it,
and
make up the calories and everything else.
so there isn't a whole lot we can do on this plant-based stuff.
You tried a couple of years ago, and the agency basically came in and said, yeah, it shouldn't be labeled that way, but we're not gonna do anything against it, about it, because we think it's a federal issue and it should be taken up federally.
It probably comes down to money too. I mean, for Vermont to go up against a national manufacturer with
To say, we're not gonna let
big
this in
pockets of
anymore.
money
Right.
to drag this out legally for years, it just doesn't make any sense.
But, why they've got all that money is because they're selling junk on the market and
Not
getting a
disagreeing.
good price for it.
It's just,
I mean,
To make one of those things almond milk, I mean, the number of almonds.
And the number of water tasted.
Water.
And almond,
Right.
yeah,
But
I know,
no,
it's
it sure is.
amazing.
I don't look.
I don't know.
It depends on what you buy. Some of it is sugar-free or unsweetened, and some of it is sweetened.
Not an alternative for lactose intolerant people, I would think largely, I guess.
It's gaining in popularity.
Is it?
so we've got the ag people coming tomorrow.
Good.
So if we think of it, we can ask them how they're policing their almond
Fake
milk.
milk.
And make sure and emphasize milk when you if you're doing it. So anything else, Michael?
That's it.
Uh,
Mr. Chair.
Good.
Can I ask you about the right to repair bill? I don't see that on any of these categories,
Yeah,
but
it
maybe
was
I
there.
missed it.
Oh, that's because I haven't staffed it and
Oh.
I admitted it. I'm sorry. I just missed that. I'm sorry.
But that is on one of these categories, right? It's an
It-
additional issue,
yeah,
it's
it's-
something that somebody else passed.
It's a House passed bill that's in your committee.
I tried to,
Okay, so that's, yeah,
So it
there's a
should be-
lot more to the repair bill than just ag equipment.
Sure.
So I thought maybe Commerce would like to look at that. It's gonna take a lot more money than I've got to get them to look at it. They'd rather not deal with that issue, that they think we should deal with it. And I, because there's more to it than just ag
Right,
equipment.
right.
And so I don't know how that's all gonna,
I will say that there was a US Supreme Court case this past spring, that took away one of the constitutional issues, or mitigated the constitutional issue with the right to repair bill. There used to be something under the Commerce Clause called extraterritoriality. So where a state passed a law that tried to reach into neighboring states and change the behavior there, that it would be per se a violation of the Commerce Clause. But the Supreme Court said, no, it's not per se a violation. You just have to do the traditional balancing test and look and see whether or not it discriminates against commerce. So that's actually good for that bill. Because that bill basically says, regardless of where the equipment is sold, the person that sold it needs to send to whoever requested in the neighboring state the information on and the parts on how to repair that equipment. And so that I would have said 6 months ago that that's got an extraterritoriality problem. Now it has a much less of an extraterritoriality problem.
And, but they had a thing on the news just recently about cell phones and electronic gadgets that right to repair. And that's why I thought maybe Commerce would like to take that bill over, but
It's not just, I mean, states are dealing with this kind of incrementally. Colorado, right to repair electric wheelchairs, right? Because you buy your electric wheelchair, if you're from Durango, you buy it in Phoenix. And then if you want to repair it, you have to go all the way back to Phoenix to get it repaired. Well, underneath the purchase agreement right now, yes, you would have to do that, but that Colorado just passed a bill, right to repair electric wheelchairs. And that's probably gonna get litigated. It's probably gonna kind of inform the rest of these bills. So.
well, it's like if you live where I do and you have to, go to Burlington to get your whatever repaired. Cheaper is buying new whatever.
But in Phoenix is a little different.
And there was an MOU with ag manufacturers that I thought was in place.
So I didn't stat the issue. I only know this because I've been trying to inform myself about it, but I'm not informed enough.
Have you read that MOU? The one that, yeah, it might be helpful if, hate to burden you with, if you had time sometime to look over that Farm Bureau thing and try to give us a professional opinion on what's allowed and whether you feel that it's sufficient. Because that, I mean, it's gonna be a bad fight if we have to do that bill. I mean, we got people on both sides that are very adamant about we really need it, and you got the others that we don't need it at all. So we ought to know as much as we could know about whether it's needed and what parts of it might be better strengthened or so we can make a decent, good decision. And I don't know if you've thought about anything any of you'd like to get on the agenda, earlier than later. Or
At some point, we're having a vet shortage down our way. I suspect other areas are having a veterinarian shortage. I don't know if our committee can or wants to take that on at all.
So the issue I've heard in the veterinary community is the franchising of the veterinary offices. And then subsequent closing of some of the smaller offices. I've heard that is becoming more prevalent, that there's, I think it's actually a hedge fund that is running this company to buy up small veterinary,
Across the country or most,
I think it's regionally right now.
both of ours have been bought up.
Well,
I'd be curious, yeah. I don't know, there's something, Anson mentioned it to me when he was in Bennington, touring a local market, that maybe even the education committee can start to look at some things related to, I don't know, loan, just loan relief, that sort of thing, to get some more vets.
We don't have
If
any
that's the
problem.
problem.
Well, we don't have many in Rutland either. There's maybe a couple guys that are open.
Yeah.
And busy, I mean, it's
Busy,
crazy.
busy.
And after COVID, you gotta sit outside in the parking lot with your
Well,
critter.
they don't do that anymore.
And, yeah, no, he's still doing it in Rutland. You can't sit inside.
Well, anything else?
If somebody's concerned about cattle running at large, I don't know
No,
if
we
that
got
calls it
that.
animal control.
Anybody put anything in on that?
No, that's an oldie and a goodie. There are laws on the books about your animals running at large. The fine is like $2.
How much?
$2.
Per step or?
No, it's like, it's a really antiquated, it's an old law. It also has the provision, which I love, that if your neighbor's animal or anybody's animal, livestock is on your property, you can seize it and make a claim of possession of it. And that somebody tried that not too long ago and didn't go over too well.
What I like about the animals at large at my house, I got a pretty good sized front lawn. And it's sloped good, but it's damp. And they go run across there and drop in, about 2 or 3 inches and kick the dirt up and they run across and I mean, it's a pain in the butt when they get out. Yeah, we ought to look at $2 or something.
Increase it.
It's
Not that it's enforced, is what you're saying, right?
that's part of it. It's a larger issue than that. I don't remember if you all recall when the pigs got out in East Dallas and nobody knew what to do. And the Fish and Wildlife was really worried because of the wild pig issue, and the agency of ag went in to help, but they don't really have that authority. And so it's one of those issues where other states have things called fence laws. You have to have your fence in a certain state, and that there are people that go out and inspect your fences to make sure that they are meeting state standards, and if you then have an animal that escapes, you only really get enforced against if your fences were out of compliance with state standards. It kind of makes sense, animals are gonna escape sometimes.
What is Gus coming? What is Gus Sealy coming in?
Is there model legislation or do other states have something you can?
The one I know of is the
Gus lined
Kansas
up,
fence
Gus
law.
Sealy and HCB areas.
Ag?
Yeah.
And they're coming
Gus Sealy is himself.
to ag agency.
No,
Gus will
I'm
be
talking-
coming next.
Gus will be coming next week.
We'll get
I've had some concern raised to me about property that the development rights have been purchased on. I've heard of one particular and some other, where they're selling ag land at $11,000 an acre without the development rights already gone. And a lot of the small farmers are saying, we can't compete with that.
I've heard 3 or 4, I haven't heard that.
Well, I've heard, and, so I a few weeks ago said to Gus, what is going on? Do you guys know? And he said they would have information about that. So he said they were gonna start to dig around and see what is happening. And I only do that, I only ask that because I think we ought to know.
Well, if they're selling that for $11,000 an acre with the development rights on it, gone. Yeah,
What
if you
normal,
aren't gonna make,
no normal farmer's gonna be able to afford that.
what do you think,
So
you could go
The
marijuana?
development rights are already gone?
Yeah.
Who's buying it?
That's what I'd like.
Well, that's what I'd like to know, and, you know, and there apparently are some places where, ag land is selling
I mean, I could see if it was like next to Stowe, right, or.
Yeah, but if you couldn't even build on it, I mean, to put,
Well, in Arizona, Saudi Arabia's bought up all kinds of land and they're pumping the water out, right? And that-
I think the best thing to do is just
Yeah.
get Gus here and have Gus tell us what they know.
Yes,
yeah, feel free.
we'll get, yeah.
Yep, well, we got,
What do you eat?
yep,
Are we off?
anything else, anybody?
I don't know.
Not, thank,
I'll bring it.
Michael,
I think it's still on.
Thanks.
thanks a lot, Michael,
Thank
for your report and putting this together. It's